Okay, in this demonstration, I'm going to make a foam stamp with a Mondrian grid-like structure that then I'm going to stamp on this paper, and then I'm going to do some paint mixing. And last time on Tuesday, I painted mostly with the brayer. Today, my challenge is I'm only going to paint with palette knives. So mixing it up a little bit. So I've got 2 square pieces of cardboard. I've got my adhesive foam. I'm going to go ahead and cut some thin strips and some thicker strips and just spontaneously make some Mondrian grid-like patterns from his later work. Now, earlier in the week, some students said, well, what if we want to do curves? You know what? You can. I'm just going to stick to, I'm going to be more traditional. I'm going to stick with that Mondrian-like structure, but several students did curves and it worked really well. There was a great sense of movement, but the thing is we want to keep it abstract. You don't want to get too complicated here. I might change it up a little bit by putting a diagonal in. Oops. So I love this adhesive craft foam. It's like super easy to cut and peel and stick. Okay, I'll do that. Not doing a curve, I'm doing an angle. Okay, so I've got that. And then I'm going to make a little stamp handle on the back by bringing my tape together. There you go, stampy, stampy. Okay, I'm going to make, you can make as many of these as you want. I'm going to do a big one and a smaller one. Not thinking about it too much, just moving sort of quickly here. Okay, so I've got my stamps. My handle. Okay, now I'm ready to stamp. Now on Tuesday, I had like a little synthetic cloth that I put my ink on, and then a student used a paper towel and it seemed to work better. So here's this paper towel. It's a little bit damp. I'm going to put my Liquitex black fluid acrylic on there. You can use whatever brand you have. It could be a color too, but in keeping with Mondrian, I'm going to stick with black. I think I put a little too much paint on there. Okay. All right. So I'm using this as a stamp pad. Yeah, I got too much ink. Oh, well. Okay. And if it comes out blotchy like that, that's okay. You'll see, because I'm going to be painting over this. So I'm going to rotate this. I can even go diagonal, or if I want. Okay, now I'm going to go to my big one. Just trying to create a overall structure that then I can plop my mixed paint colors in. Now my paper towel is absorbing all the paint. The overall repeating pattern with some turns and adjustments, just which creates a little bit more movement and interest. Okay, so I've got my overall Mondrian-ish structure, stamp structure, and I'm going to set that aside. It's a warm day, so by the time I want to put paint in here, this will be dry. And now I'm going to go into paint mixing. My new favorite Savanna French paint came today. This color is called Savanna. It's a neutral, but it's a warm neutral. This looks black, but it's not. It's indigo. So I'm going to mix these two colors. It's going to be a subtle color palette. So earlier this week, Cindy mixed green and a gray, and I think the gray was the issue. The green was fine, but I think the gray was not warm enough. So if you went for a lighter, warmer color, I think it would have worked. So I'm going to mix a gradation. When mixing a gradation, I'm going to add a little bit of the darker color to the lighter color and make these mixtures that go from this lighter Savanna color over to the indigo. I want to reserve some paint as I go along of each color, because that's what I'll use to paint in my grid-like structure with my palette knife. So I'm going to take some of that or most of that and bring it down. I can always squeeze more of that color out of the tube, but not my mixtures. Okay, same with the indigo. I'm going to reserve some. Okay, and I'm going to add just a smidge, because this is going to change this color pretty rapidly, I think. Okay, so then I scoop and I flip. I like the angled palette knife best because I can scoop and flip and get that paint off the surface of the palette knife, whereas some other ones, it seems to get stuck to the bottom, and I always found that really frustrating. Plus, I can use this angled palette knife as, it's going to be my paintbrush today. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to take some of that, bring it over here, and add a little bit more of that indigo. As you can see, a little bit goes a long way. So I'm getting this warm bluish gray. I'm going to bring it up pretty rapidly here. Now it's going more towards the blue scale, blue end of the spectrum. Maybe I'll do one more here. More blue than gray. Okay. And I really think the best way to get to know your paints is to mix them. I bought all kinds of color wheels, and for some reason I can't relate to it unless I actually mix it and see how the colors interact. Okay, so I've got my mixtures. Now I'm going to bring my Mondrian structure back and just grab some of these paints and apply them with my palette knife. Now, what's great about the palette knife, if I like to put my index finger right there, and if I use a firm pressure, I'm going to get a transparency. I'm not using that much paint. So I'm just trying to distribute it evenly over this surface. Okay, still I have all that paint, quite a bit of paint left. Okay, I'll keep doing this, and then as I go further along, I'm going to add thicker, more opaque paint. Okay, so I picked that one, and I am overlapping some of my structure. And I think by not having it all the lines connect, like a lot of Mondrian's paintings, we're going to hopefully avoid the feeling of, oh, I have to color it within the lines, like coloring book style, right? You don't. You can overlap, leave some white space. Okay, now I'll go to that one. And then what I can do is have some colors on top of colors or touching. And then what you're going to get is you're going to see in real time how the colors interact with each other and whether you like the interaction or not. Now, less pressure, I'm going to get thicker, slightly more opaque globs of paint. If I go really, really light and low 45-degree angle, the paint comes off and it's opaque. So you can play with that. Back to my original color. Okay, I'm putting on thicker, more opaque globs. And you might want to have a rag to occasionally wipe off your palette knife so colors, they're intermixing here, which is fine, but okay, now when the paint is thick, I can use the point. Oops, I'm off the screen here. I can use the point of my angled palette knife and my thumb. I can scrape through and I can see the color below. Graffito. Now there's also this flat angle on the palette knife, and I can scrape through that way and reveal, I call it excavation, reveal what's below. And then some of that leftover paint, I can smear it in another area. I'm going to go for my original indigo color. So thick, opaque paint, colors touching, overlapping, interacting. Now I'm going to take my other favorite Liquitex palette knife that's got little teeth in it, and I can scrape through and get a more controlled graffito marks going on. Here I'm breaking the pattern a little bit, and I'm curving, creating some movement going on in there, and then the colors seem to kind of knit together here, which I like. Okay, and usually at this point, there's kind of a feeling of, I want to add another color because this palette seems so limited. And you can do that if you want. I probably would add like an orange or a red, but just a smidge. But my focus is to work the whole surface and play just with the palette knife or palette knives and see what I can get. This is also something, it's great to do if you're mixing paint and want to see how your paints interact, or when you're done painting, if you've got extra paint on your palette, just fiddle with it on a piece of paper and don't let that paint go to waste. See how it interacts. Okay, I think I will stop there.